Hello and welcome. Another short-ish video. These tend to be about 10 minutes when I say that. But I wanted to kind of go through the week in review and kind of a recognition of a greater trend that I'm seeing in my musical career and just kind of get into it. So let's get started. So as I mentioned last time, and hopefully you're not hearing too much of the washing machine noise in the background here, I recorded the last episode, I want to say Thursday night. So it is Monday morning. So still later than I typically would record these, but early enough that I should be able to get it out more or less on time. So we're getting back on schedule again. And though I recorded the last episode at the end of a double header gig that I had, which was a new high watermark in terms of how quickly I turned around 2 different gigs at the same time. I ended up doing it twice in the same weekend, basically. So Wednesday and counting Wednesday to Sunday as one arc. Also, this was financially the best week of my nascent music career at this point. So definitely a very good week. So I ended up having gigs Wednesday, 2 gigs Wednesday, 1 gig Friday, and then 2 gigs on Sunday, which was really you know, kind of a cool, like that's a 5 gig week. Felt kind of fine by the end of it. I was tired. I was definitely ready to be done singing for sure a couple different times this week, but I never felt like any kind of strain or pain or anything like that. And I just rested, and now I feel kind of pretty normal on a Monday after all that singing. So that's cool. One of the things that was very interesting about this week for me was kind of the way the week manifested. And this has happened before. I joke that I'm the designated alternate in the Bay Area, which is not a bad place to be. I mean, Freewheel Brewing will reach out to me all the time if they have something last minute. Aloft reached out to me and said, hey, can you play tomorrow? And then a couple times now, I've been able to play at Ocean Ciders on a last minute, and that's what the 5th gig was this weekend as well. So I'm getting kind of a reputation as someone you can reach out to who can just like solve a problem. And that's a cool thing to have. And I'm gonna jump right into the tip this week. I'm gonna keep it on the shorter side this time in general. Calling this one the X Factors, because I realize that like as performers, as you know, entertainers, I think we all have a different kind of set of skills that we bring to bear and kind of things we get known for. And depending on the crowd, you know, I'm kind of building with the kind of stable of X Factors in, and they're not all appropriate at every part of the process or at every gig. For instance, I do think the fact that I'm a solo act that sounds like a band in this area, which is quite a novelty, is a huge X Factor. It means people reach out to me, can you make it tonight? I look at my calendar, I look at the clock, I check to make sure I have enough energy left for a gig, and I'm like, yes. And they get an answer inside of 5, sometimes like less than 5 minutes, or maybe at worse an hour. So, you know, that kind of problem solver, designated alternate thing, that's a good place to be. So that's a big one, but that doesn't happen when I'm playing, that happens before I'm playing. It gets me in the door, which is a good thing. Then you've got recently the request queue thing, which, you know, kind of the more high tech, you know, you scan a QR code, you see a list of songs and you just request, and I'm starting to get some purchase and learning how to kind of work a crowd around that. So, you know, I try to like tell a story about why I know the song, and I just do the song for people. Or if I get like an oddball pick, like a B-side that I just have on my list, I always like thank them extra for that, because I love when people challenge me with my more obscure stuff, things that I'm kind of shy to put on a set list by default. Then there's also just the live looping in general. I mean, it's such a novelty and such a show, kind of by its nature, that, you know, you get this kind of like, you're going to see something different when I show up at a gig versus, you know, any number of acoustic guitarists or small duos in the area. And yeah, there are other people who do some live looping, but none around me at least that I've met. And I would love to meet other loopers to geek out and trade ideas. But there's just aren't anyone who does that sort of thing the way I do it. So that's definitely another X Factor. It creates interest around my performance. You know, another thing that I'm starting to kind of lean into, and I've mentioned this in a previous episode, I should say, is just the ability to set up teardown very, very quickly. I can usually go from my car to playing music in half an hour now. I'm trying to get that faster and faster and faster, but the more gigs I do, and 5 in a week is a lot, the quicker I get, both assessing a new situation, figuring out how I want my gear to be laid out, whether I want a stage monitor or not, just to use my in-ears, for instance. You know, maybe it's like my one in-ear monitor and my PA is more than enough monitoring. That saves me time and volume. Sometimes I actually put the monitor up, not for my own benefit, but for the benefit of anyone who might be behind me, because I'm just using the same stage mix. It goes out to the PA one direction, maybe comes back through me this way. So if there's people behind me, if I'm in a setting like that, I use the monitor even if I'm not using it myself. But anyway, like just assessing a stage, getting set up very quickly. You know, on Wednesday, I talked about it briefly last time, I had you know, an 8 p.m. gig at a loft. After finishing at 6:45 with Mr. Jones and me, 10 minutes, you know, driving time between the two locations. So I had to pack up my gear, load up my car, drive over there, unload my car, set up my gear at a new venue inside of an hour and 15 minutes, which is pretty aggressive, but it worked out pretty well. In the end, I was ready before they were. They had some construction going on that was disrupting the general area. So I ended up being delayed by 5 minutes, but not because of me, but because of just the venue. But I was able to still get set up very quickly and take requests and go. So anyway, yeah, this is something I've kind of been cultivating, like what is, you know, when I answer the question, what do I bring to a venue? Some of those things are for me, like for instance, I'm easy to book. Like that is actually both for me and the person booking me, but that's something that I'm very proud of, like that I'm able to kind of hone in on that niche. And I think one of the major advantages, one of the reasons I wanted to do solo music was so I can just pop into a spot and play music for them. But then all the things like the fact that you get interactive shows, the fact that it's like live loop, so it's all very dynamic and interesting, and you know, range of materials, another X factor. Like I lean into like I think the 80s and 90s is kind of my strength, but there's a lot of good 70s stuff in there. And then now I'm starting to kind of add things from the 2000s, 2010s, etc. And it's giving me a little more range to handle different kinds of places. I'm able to play more upbeat music than is typical for an acoustic performer. And that kind of, again, lets me really kind of slot into any set situation, because my goal is really about keeping myself challenged and keeping it fun for me, but also being able to kind of slot into as many different situations as possible and be successful and be a good asset for the venue that I'm playing for, or the party, or whatever. So yeah, that's just kind of the reflection. I had a lot of gigs and a lot of running around, obviously, since the last time I even turned on this camera. I had 3 additional gigs, and I just wanted to kind of, like digest what I learned from that. This is the whole purpose of this series, and that's basically where I ended up. So, having said all that, I guess just a couple like notes of what's kind of going on next. I do have 3 gigs this weekend. Unless something pops up during the week, which it could happen, designated alternate and all that. But I was able to be playing at Santana Row at their prime spot. Hopefully this one hits. I have not had any luck making any money at Santana Row, so hoping that works out well. And then I'm back to Ocean Ale House, which was a gig I recently had to cancel when my mom was in town, and back to Ocean Ciders again this weekend, but on the schedule as expected. So yeah, it should be a lot of fun. Some really interesting gigs coming up the week after that. I really want to speak very, very briefly also. The other gig on Sunday was a Coastal Wildflower Day. And again, kind of a fun experience. Big thanks to Aaron, if you find your way to the channel, for booking me for this. But I ended up playing as kind of part of a bunch of like a panel or a rotating stage of entertainers for that. I think I was their only musical act, or not their only one, maybe the only pop music act. And it was actually really, really fun. I got to meet, the person doing sound was Father John. So anyway, if you find your way here, thank you again for having me there. I really appreciated it. It was a lot of fun. I got like a nice tight 45-minute set. I learned another thing in my checklist when I am working with other venues is that I need to make sure that I allow for, basically there's a challenge if my setup goes into a mixer that gives phantom power, it's gonna make a popping sound every time I use my AB switcher. So that's something I need to make sure that I put in riders and kind of prepare for. So I might even use my mixer as a go-between, literally just to avoid that being a problem. And now that's gonna make a lot of noise, so I think I'm gonna go now. But I hope you have a good one, and I'll talk to you soon.